In 1934, a Chicago patrolman noticed something strange. The homes that never got robbed on his beat weren't the ones with the biggest locks. They were the ones that looked lived in even when nobody was home. Number 14 on this list fooled burglars so completely that insurance companies quietly recommended it for decades. And number 3 was a trick so simple a child could set it up in under a minute. Before cameras, before alarms, families protected empty houses with nothing but cleverness. Hit subscribe, let's count down. Number 25, the kitchen radio left playing all day. Before a house had a single sensor on it, it had a voice. When the family packed into the Ford on a Sunday morning, the last thing your grandmother did was leave the kitchen radio on, loud enough to carry through a closed window to the sidewalk. A burglar casing a block worked mostly by ear, listening for the dead stillness that told him nobody was inside. A radio killed that silence completely. To a man at the gate, the muffled sound of a big band program coming through the glass meant a person was in there, in the back, about to walk into the front room any second. A tube radio cost around $20 in the 1940s and used a few cents of electricity a day. Families decided that was a cheap price to sound occupied. The radio never stopped talking, and neither did the house. Number 24, clockwork lamp timers. Most people today think this device was invented for Christmas lights. It was not. The mechanical time switch, that round dial with the metal trippers you push down, was one of the first real pieces of automation an ordinary family ever owned. You plugged it into the wall, plugged your lamp into it, set it to click on at dusk and off around 10, and the house lit and darkened itself while everyone was 200 miles away at the lake. The Intermatic dial timer cost only a few dollars and lasted for decades. The genius was the pattern. A house dark all night looked empty. A house where the light snapped on at 7 and off at 10:30 looked like people who ate supper, read the paper, and went to bed. That ordinary human rhythm of a lamp obeying a bedtime was the whole trick. Families set these before a long trip and drove away, knowing the house would keep its own hours. Number 23, work boots and a coat by the door. This one cost nothing, and that was the point. A woman leaving for the afternoon would set her husband's muddy work boots square on the front porch, toes pointed at the door as if he'd just kicked them off and stepped inside. Sometimes she draped his heavy coat over the porch rail where it showed through the glass. To anyone approaching, the message was immediate and physical. A big working man lives here, and he is home right now. There's a reason this rattled burglars more than a lock ever could. A lock is a puzzle to be solved. A man is a fight to be avoided. The whole calculation of breaking in changes the second you believe someone is behind that door. Families understood a burglar is a coward doing math, and a pair of size 11 boots ruined his arithmetic every time. Number 22, a borrowed car in the driveway. An empty driveway was a confession. In a neighborhood where everyone knew whose car was whose, a bare patch of gravel announced that the whole family had gone somewhere and taken the car with them. So when a family left for a long weekend, they made a quiet arrangement. You park your second car in my driveway while we're gone. Better yet, move it a few feet every day so it isn't sitting in the exact same spot from Friday to Monday. That small motion, a car that shifted position, told the street someone was coming and going, backing out for errands, pulling in at night. A car in the drive was the single most powerful signal a house could send, because in that era, a parked car meant a person, and a person meant risk. Neighbors traded this favor back and forth without ever writing it down. Number 21, curtains left half drawn. There's a mistake almost everyone made, and the careful families never did. When you leave for vacation, you do not yank every curtain shut tight. A house sealed up like a drum, every window blanked out at 2 in the afternoon, screams that the people expect to be gone a long while. Burglars read that sealed tight look from down the block. The trick was to leave the house exactly as it looked on a normal Tuesday. Curtains pulled halfway, the kitchen shade up, one bedroom curtain open, one closed, the way a real household leaves them without thinking. The house had to look careless, ordinary, unbothered, because an occupied home is never perfectly buttoned up. Your grandmother knew the appearance of privacy, and the appearance of absence looked completely different to a trained eye, and she left the windows telling the right story. Number 20. laundry on the line. Nothing said a woman was home and working like a line full of wash drying in the yard. So families used it. Before leaving for the day, they'd peg out a few shirts, a couple of sheets, a row of dish towels, and let them hang in the sun. To a passerby, laundry on the line was proof of the most ordinary activity in the world. Somebody washed those this morning. Somebody will be out to bring them in before the dew. A burglar did not break into a house whose owner was clearly puttering around the property, and the wash put her right there in his imagination, apron on, likely to round the corner at any moment. When a neighbor was watching the place, she'd take them down at dusk and hang fresh ones the next morning, keeping the whole illusion turning like a real week of chores. Number 19, the dog's bowl and the sign. Half the families who posted a "Beware of Dog" sign on the gate had no dog at all, and it worked anyway. The sign was only the start. The convincing part was the props in the yard: a battered metal water bowl by the back step, a length of chain staked into the grass, a chewed rubber ball, a worn spot in the lawn where a dog would have paced. The story assembled itself in a stranger's mind. There's a dog here, a real one, big enough to need a chain, and he is somewhere close. A burglar's greatest fear was never the homeowner. It was the animal he couldn't see, the one that would start barking the instant he touched the fence and bring the whole street to their windows. The best defense was a dog that never had to exist. Number 18, stopped milk and stacked newspapers. This is where families made their most dangerous mistake, and the smart ones fixed it. Nothing advertised an empty house louder than a doorstep. Bottles of milk piling up, souring in the sun. Newspapers stacking into a little tower of evidence. To a burglar strolling the block, that pile was a calendar. He could count the papers and know exactly how many days the family had been gone and how many more he had to work with. So the careful household made the call before they left. They telephoned the dairy to hold the milk. They stopped the paper, or better, arranged for a neighbor to walk over each morning and carry it inside as if someone had just opened the door. The doorstep had to look attended. An empty porch that stayed clean was a house that still had someone reaching out the door every day, and that impression kept the door shut. First pattern break. Here's the thing about all of this that people forget. A burglar in those years was not some criminal mastermind. He was, more often than not, an ordinary opportunist walking a neighborhood in daylight, looking for the single easiest house on the street. He was not trying to defeat your home. He was trying to avoid effort and avoid people in that order. Every trick on this list works on the same simple truth. The thief will always pass by the house that might have someone in it and go find one that clearly does not. Families weren't building fortresses. They couldn't afford fortresses. What they were doing was cheaper and smarter. They were making their empty house look like the wrong choice. In a row of 10 houses, the burglar only needed to believe yours was occupied and the one down the block was not. That was the whole game. Not strength, doubt. Plant one seed of doubt in a coward's mind and he keeps walking. Your grandmother never had to win the fight. She only had to make him decide it wasn't worth starting. Number 17, a lamp burning upstairs. There was a particular light every experienced family left on, and it wasn't the porch light or the living room. It was a single lamp in an upstairs bedroom, glowing through the night. Think about what that light said. A downstairs light left on could mean carelessness, a bulb forgotten. But a bedroom light, up on the second floor, burning at 1 a.m, told a very specific story. Someone is up there. Someone is awake or reading, or a light sleeper who keeps a lamp on. It put a living person on the top floor, right where an intruder would least want to meet one. Families ran that lamp off a timer, and they picked the bedroom on purpose. The math of breaking into a house where you believe a person is lying awake upstairs was a math no burglar wanted to do. That one small window of light did more work than every downstairs bulb combined. Number 16, the neighbor curtain rotation. This was the masterpiece, the trick that separated a family who'd really thought it through from one who just left a light on and hoped. Before a long trip, you gave a key to the neighbor you trusted and asked her to do one small thing every single day. Walk through the house and change it. Open the curtains in the morning, close them at night. Move the shade up in the kitchen, down in the bedroom. Turn on a different lamp than yesterday. The point was that a house does not hold still. A truly occupied home changes hour by hour. And a burglar watching a place for days was watching for exactly that, the little daily movements that proved a body was inside. A house frozen in the same position for a week gave itself away no matter how many lights were on. The neighbor's daily walkthrough made the house breathe. It was the closest thing to a living person the family could leave behind, and it fooled the most patient watcher on the street. Number 15, children's toys in the yard. A bicycle dropped on its side in the front lawn, a jump rope on the porch steps, a ball left out in the grass. To us, it looks like clutter. To a burglar in 1955, it looked like danger of a particular kind. Toys meant children, and children meant a mother. And a mother was almost never far from her kids and almost always home during the day. A house with a child's bicycle flung down in the yard felt occupied around the clock, full of small, unpredictable people who came and went and slammed doors. Families leaving for an afternoon deliberately left the toys out rather than tidying them away, because tidiness read as absence, and a scatter of toys read as a busy lived-in home. The mess was the protection. No thief wanted to climb through a window into a house that a swarm of children might come pouring back into at any moment. Second pattern break. Now here's where it gets interesting, because the next trick was so effective, it crossed from folk wisdom into something the professionals took seriously. For decades, families used silhouettes, human shapes placed in windows, to sell the illusion of a person inside. And it worked well enough that insurance men and police chiefs of the era, in newspaper columns and safety pamphlets, actually recommended versions of it to homeowners. Think about that. The advice to fake a human being in your house was not a joke passed between neighbors. It was, for a time, semi-official safety guidance, because everyone understood the same principle. The eye is fooled by a shape. A man standing at your gate at dusk, glancing up at a lit window, sees the outline of a head and shoulders, and his brain fills in the rest. He does not investigate. He does not knock. He assumes, and he leaves. The whole security of the home rested on one gray shape behind a curtain, and that shape did the work of a locked vault. Number 14, the dressmaker's dummy in the window. This is the shape that trick refers to, and it was more common than you'd ever believe. Nearly every household with a woman who sewed, which meant nearly every household owned a dressmaker's form, a headless torso on a stand used for pinning and fitting garments, and clever families discovered it had a second job. Set that form in an upstairs window at dusk, drape a shirt or a robe over it, pull the curtain most of the way across so only a soft outline showed, and switch on a lamp behind it. From the street, in the failing light, that silhouette read unmistakably as a person standing at the window, looking out. Some families pinned a hat above it to give it a head. A woman living alone would move the form from window to window over an evening so the person seemed to walk through the house. It was theater, pure and simple, staged for an audience of one nervous thief, and it played to empty houses across the country every single night. Number 13, the set dinner table. A woman expecting to be out until after dark had a quiet trick she performed before she left. She set the table, plates laid out, glasses, silverware beside each place, a serving bowl in the center, all of it visible through the dining room window with the light left on above it. To a stranger looking in, that table told a complete and reassuring story. Supper is coming. This family's about to sit down. Someone is in the kitchen right now, and the whole household will be gathered in this room within the hour. Nobody breaks into a house that is minutes from being full of people at the table. The set table put the entire family in the burglar's imagination, seated, passing the potatoes, and it did it with nothing but the dishes already in the cupboard. It cost not 1 cent, and it painted a picture of a home so occupied that walking away was the only sane choice. Number 12, chimney smoke. In the colder months, a cold chimney was a dead giveaway. On a freezing January afternoon, every occupied house on the block had a thread of smoke rising from it, because every family kept a fire going against the cold. A house with a stone-cold chimney in the middle of winter was obviously empty, its people gone somewhere warm, and burglars read the rooftops of a street like a map. So families made arrangements. A neighbor with a key would come over and lay a small fire in the stove or furnace, enough to send smoke up the chimney around the times a house should look lively. Just that ribbon of gray against the winter sky said someone is home and warm inside. In a cold month, it was worth more than any lock, because a smoking chimney is the oldest proof in the world that a family is gathered around a hearth. Number 11. The porch light rotation. Everyone knows to leave the porch light on. That's exactly why leaving it on all the time stopped fooling anyone. A porch light that burned at 3 in the afternoon and stayed burning at 3 in the morning day after day wasn't the sign of a person. It was the sign of a person who had left and forgotten to switch it off, which meant a person who wasn't coming back for a while. The families who understood this treated the porch light like a person would, on at dusk, off at bedtime, and crucially, not the same bedtime every night. A neighbor or a timer would shut it off at 10 one night, 11 the next, catch it early another evening. That small irregularity, that human inconsistency, was the difference between a light that guarded the house and a light that betrayed it. A perfect schedule looked like a machine. A slightly imperfect one looked like a tired family remembering to hit the switch. Number 10. Trash cans at the curb. Garbage day was a weekly test of whether a house was occupied, and the empty house failed it without help. On collection morning, every lived-in home rolled its cans to the curb, and every home that didn't stood out like a missing tooth. A burglar noting which houses skipped trash day was building a list of families who'd gone away. So the arrangement was simple and standard. The neighbor took your cans to the curb on pickup morning and brought them back that evening, exactly as if you'd done it yourself. Better still, they'd toss a bag of their own trash into your can so it wasn't suspiciously empty. That single weekly motion, cans out at dawn and back in at dusk, kept the house checked off the list of the living. It was a tiny chore that carried enormous weight because participating in the ordinary rhythms of the street was itself the disguise. Number 9. The phonograph left running. Before the radio owned the house, the phonograph did, and even after, families used the record player as a second voice. But the phonograph had a limitation the radio didn't, and clever households turned it into an advantage. A record only played a few minutes before it needed changing, so a phonograph couldn't run unattended all day. What it could do was cover the crucial hours. A family stepping out for the evening put on a stack of records with the automatic changer dropping one after another, filling the front rooms with music and the pleasant clatter of a needle finding its groove. To anyone at the window, music meant more than sound. Music meant someone chose it, someone was enjoying it, someone was living an ordinary evening. And when the last record spun out into silence, the family was usually already turning back onto their street. The music timed itself to their absence, a small performance that ended right about when the show was over. Third pattern break. Here's what almost nobody stops to consider. Every trick you've heard so far was free, or nearly so, and it was invented by families out of pure necessity in an age when there was simply nothing to buy. And then the world changed. Beginning in the post-war years and accelerating with every decade, an entire industry rose up to sell people the very safety their grandparents had improvised for nothing. Alarm companies, monitored systems, sensors on every window, and eventually the camera on the doorbell that watches the porch for you. Each one solved a real problem, and each one quietly taught families to forget what they used to know. Why leave a lamp on a timer when you can pay a monthly fee? Why ask your neighbor to walk through the house when a device will do it? The knowledge did not fail. It was replaced and then forgotten, and a whole generation grew up believing a house could only be protected by something with a wire running to it. Our grandparents protected empty houses with cleverness and a good relationship with the family next door. We protected ours with a subscription. Number 8. Footprints in fresh snow. Winter set a trap for the empty house that no lamp could fix, and only the sharpest families thought of it. After a fresh snowfall, an occupied home was surrounded by evidence. Footprints down the front walk, a shoveled path, tire tracks in and out of the drive, boot prints on the porch. A house buried in untouched snow, its walk unshoveled, not a single track leading to the door, announced its emptiness more loudly than any other signal on this list. There was no faking your way around a clean blanket of white, so the neighbor with the key did more than bring in the mail. He tramped up the walk and back. He shoveled the path after every storm. He drove his own car in and out of the driveway to lay down tracks. He churned up the snow around the door until it looked like a home people came and went from all day. In winter, footprints were proof of life, and a family that thought ahead made sure their empty house left tracks. Number 7. rearranged furniture silhouettes. This was a subtle one, used mostly by people who expected to be gone a good while and knew a patient burglar might be watching. Over a stretch of days, a house seen from the street should not look identical every single evening, so the neighbor doing the daily walkthrough was told to change what the windows showed. Pull the armchair closer to the front window one night, move a floor lamp to the other side of the room, shift a plant on the sill. The silhouettes a burglar saw against the lit curtains would subtly rearrange from one evening to the next, and that quiet movement of shapes told him a person was in there living, using the rooms, nudging the furniture around the way people do. A house whose interior shadows never changed was a photograph. A house whose shadows shifted was alive. It was patient stagecraft aimed at the one thief who took his time, and it beat him at his own game. Number 6. A man's hat on the hall stand. Just inside the front door of most houses stood a hall tree or coat stand, usually visible through the glass or the side light beside the door. Families discovered it made a perfect little stage. A woman living alone or a whole household heading out for the day would hang a man's hat and a heavy overcoat on that stand where anyone at the door could see them. The message was plain and aimed straight at a burglar's deepest fear. A grown man belongs to this house. His hat is right there, and he is somewhere just out of sight. In a period when a man's hat was as personal and constant as his shoes, an intruder seeing one hung by the door assumed its owner was near. Widows used this trick for years to make it look like a husband still lived in the house. A single felt hat on a hook did the work of a bodyguard, and it never had to say a word. Number 5. Answering the telephone. In the age of the party line, when several households shared one telephone circuit, a ringing phone nobody ever answered was a signal that carried right down the wire. Neighbors could hear each other's rings. A house whose phone rang and rang day after day with no one ever picking up was a house whose people had clearly gone away. So part of the standard arrangement when a family left town was to ask the neighbor to answer the phone, take a message, say the family stepped out, promise they'd call back. To anyone trying to figure out whether a house was empty, and burglars did sometimes simply call a house to check, a picked-up phone was proof of a living presence. The neighbor's voice on the line stood in for the whole absent family. It kept the illusion intact across a channel most people never even thought of as a risk. Number 4. The deliberate lived-in mess. There's a temptation before a long trip to scrub the house spotless and put everything away. The careful families did the opposite, on purpose. They left the house looking used. A coffee cup by the sink, a newspaper folded open on the armchair, reading glasses on the side table, a cardigan thrown over a kitchen chair, a dish towel hung crooked on the oven handle. Every one of these props, glimpsed through a window, told the same reassuring lie. Someone was just here. Someone set that cup down a minute ago and will be back for it. A perfectly tidy, everything in its place house read as a home that had been closed up and left. A slightly messy, mid-activity house read as one still humming with daily life. The families who understood the burglar's eye knew clutter was camouflage, and they left the ordinary debris of a lived-in day sitting in the windows to whisper, occupied from every surface. Number 3. Erasing the chalk marks. Here's the secret, hiding in plain sight, on the gateposts of America, the one almost nobody remembers now. In the era of tramps and traveling thieves, an informal code of chalk and scratch marks spread across the country, left on fences, gateposts, and curbs to pass messages from one wandering stranger to the next. A certain mark meant a generous household. Another meant a mean dog. And some, the ones families feared most, were said to flag an easy target, a house often left empty, a lock worth trying. Watchful homeowners learned to read their own gateposts. Every so often they'd walk the front of the property looking for a fresh scrawl of chalk or a scratch in the paint that hadn't been there before, and they'd scrub it away the moment they found it. Wiping out that mark reset the house to an unknown quantity in the eyes of every passing stranger, the closest thing that era had to deleting a target off a map. Number 2, the Neighbor Watch Pact. Long before there was a printed sign on the corner declaring an official neighborhood watch, there was the thing itself, unwritten and far stronger. On a good street, the families simply watched out for one another as a matter of course. When one household left town, 3 or 4 neighbors knew, and each kept half an eye on the empty house without being asked twice. They noticed a strange car that lingered too long. They noticed a man walking up a drive that wasn't his. They knew whose relatives were expected and whose weren't, so a stranger on the porch was spotted in minutes, not hours. This human web of attention was worth more than every gadget invented since because it could think. A camera only records. A neighbor telephones the police, or walks over, or turns on her own porch light and stands in the window until the stranger thinks better of it. Families protected each other's empty houses with nothing but the ordinary decency of knowing the people next door, and it was the single most effective security a home could have. Number 1, the live-in relative. And in the end, the most powerful way to make an empty house look occupied was to make sure it wasn't empty at all. When a family left for a week or a month, the oldest and surest solution was simply to have someone move in. A widowed aunt glad of the company, a nephew home from the service with nowhere particular to be, a trusted boarder who kept the lamps burning and the smoke rising and the trash cans rolling to the curb. A real person needed no timer and no dressmaker's dummy, because every signal on this entire list was generated naturally, effortlessly, by a living human being going about an ordinary day inside the walls. The lights came on because someone read at night. The radio played because someone liked it. The footprints appeared in the snow because someone walked to the mailbox. Families understood that all their clever tricks were only ever imitations of this one true thing, a person at home. When they could arrange it, they skipped the illusion and left behind the genuine article, and the house was never empty at all. Here's my challenge. Pick one of these and try it before your next trip. Leave the radio on. Set a lamp on a timer. Ask your neighbor to bring the cans in and walk through once a day. Then tell me in the comments which one you used and whether it felt like your grandparents were right all along. Because these weren't just tricks. They were a whole way of watching out for each other that we traded away for a monthly bill. Your grandmother knew how to make an empty house lie for her. Now you do too.